Welcome to You Matter in Business. Your hosts today are Ariel, me, and Miriam.
Your heart, your brand story, and your success because you matter in your business.
Welcome to You Matter in Business. This week we have some exciting news, and guess who I have with me? I have Miriam.
Hi, Ariel. How are you? Surprise, surprise.
Surprise! My special guest.
Yeah.
He's very special, by the way.
Thanks.
We're going to talk about change because I know change has impacted
Mm.
my life and I know change has impacted yours. So that's going to be our big subject for today. So are you ready to start having a great conversation?
Let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
change.
Okay. So the question is, how has embracing change in your business journey transformed both your personal brand and your relationship with yourself?
Wow. Relationship with yourself. Wow, that's big.
Yes, that
Okay.
is
So
big.
it's a good question. I like it. So, okay. Do you want to answer your own question first?
Sure.
You want to kind of, so how has your embracing change impacted your business journey and your personal brand and your relationship with yourself? Wow, go for it.
Okay, so we're talking about change and embracing change.
Ah,
I think most people hate change. I tend to be adventurous, so change is part of, I tend to like change, but I don't
mm-hmm.
like change all at the same time. So I like things very predictable, but I do like change. So there's like a level of my life that change is welcome, and then a level that I try to keep predictable. So it's kind of learning about yourself and becoming aware of yourself and realizing what you need to be predictable and what makes you comfortable in both directions is kind of important. But then
Mm-hmm.
you have in business changes, economy changes, government changes, rules change, laws change. So you have to learn how to adapt. So I've always in my head used the analogy of sailing because it's not a straight shot. And I don't think life is a straight shot. So when you embrace the fact that life is not a straight it's not a straight street. It's wandering through a beautiful mountain cliff that's all curvy and fun because it's got to go around obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what we have to learn how to do. So when we take it from an adventure perspective, it's not scary. You know, you don't know what's happening next. That's the part of change that's scary. You don't know what's going to be on the other side of the change.
Mm-hmm.
So if I just look at it like what's around the bend, so I have that anticipation, but it's a joyful anticipation, it tends to allow me to embrace change much easier. Now, changing it as you get older is a little tougher to look in the mirror. Let's just be honest. I'm going to be honest about this. And there's a level of you that fights it for a very long time.
Mm.
And you're like, go away. The person in the mirror, you're like, go away. I want the young version back. But then there's a point where that changes. And you
Okay.
start to see the you that isn't in the outside when you
Mm-hmm.
look in the mirror.
Yeah.
So that the physical changes that are happening that you have no control over, I mean, theoretically, we have no control over it. You can do
Depends how much you want to spend, doesn't it?
exactly. And I'm not a big fan of surgical craziness, but that's just me. But with that change, you have to learn to accept it. You have to, and that's a transitional change, right? It takes several years before it gets to the point you're like, where you don't care anymore.
I think that's interesting coming from a photographer's perspective, isn't it? And particularly, I know that you've done quite a lot of work with ladies of a certain age, and I'm classing myself in that category, a lady of a certain age. Yeah, where you're right, where we start to, everything starts to go south, and lines appear where they hadn't appeared before, and yeah, we in our heads we're still that 18-year-old amazing, thin,
Hot wearing this,
hot.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No kind of grayness in our hair and all those
Uh-huh.
things, or hair where it shouldn't be. I know my husband always complains about hair where he shouldn't be, but all those kind of things that that creep up on us when we get older. But I think, and you have the unique struggle with getting women to see past those changes and actually embrace the fact that they're beautiful at this point in their life, despite the fact that they're different from what they were at 18. I think the other thing I was going to say to what responding to what you just said is that actually some people don't like change at all. In fact, some people find it incredibly unsettling and incredibly difficult. And I know autistic people find change and lack of routine and anything that's unpredictable really difficult. And I think knowing knowing that other people struggle with it, we need to accept that we're not all the same, are we? So when you're asking people to accept change or trying to change something for them, how are they going to react to that? And learning to, and I know in a couple of weeks' time, I think next week we're going to talk about emotional intelligence, and we're also we've got an amazing guest coming on as well who's going to talk about emotional intelligence, and part of that is about self-awareness, but part of it is also about being aware of other people and how things affect them. So I think change is such an interesting thing, and you're right, looking at it as a bit of a journey, and you can't see over the wall, you can't see past that barrier and what's going to be around the other side. And but in terms of how it's changed, so I've had a lot of change in my life recently. Move into the US and then move into a different state in the US all within 2 years. Starting a new business and lots of different collaborations that I'm doing and all those kind of things, leaving my family behind. And luckily, I absolutely love change. In fact, I thrive on change. So I'm a bit odd like that. And it doesn't bother me. In fact, I just love it. But I've had to deal with a lot of change, and I think that's why I like it, because it's just been a constant. It's almost like change is constant in my life, which is really weird. But it's certainly, I think, by when I stepped out and started out of the corporate world and into entrepreneurship and working for myself, and had to deal with all those things, that has changed me massively. And I'm embracing that change. I mean, things that I have had to deal with in the last year, 18 months, 2 years, I would never have had to deal with if I hadn't have stepped out of my comfort zone and gone ahead and done this new business, this new experience. Just so much has changed, which is great. But it's now given me those experiences that I can take into whatever I do in the future. And that's exciting. That's, so learn. And we've talked about growth mindset before, and that learning to always, look at the positives in things and how you can use those as learning experiences rather than being scared by change. That was a really long-winded answer. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. Sometimes I had a long-winded one too. You brought up a good point, because when I was growing up, from the time I was born to about 5 years old, I think I lived in 4 or 5 different states.
Oh.
And then I moved. The next move was around 12. And then I moved in my early 20s. So moving was not a scary thing for me because we did it multiple times. So as a child, I learned, I mean, we were in completely different states. It wasn't like we moved to a different house. Whereas my children have pretty much lived in Florida and grown up in Florida and still live in Florida. So their perspective of change will be very different than mine was. I have some friends that have moved once in their whole life and they'll never move again. And it's because it was so traumatic for them to move, because it was at a bad age
Mm.
where that was super um, disconnecting from their social world and stuff. There's a certain age in middle school or something that's not the best time to move kids, but from my experience, that was when I moved, and it definitely changed a lot of my life because I was about 12, 11 or 12. And, all these people you came to love and trust, they're out of your life now. Now you got a bunch of kids that aren't nice. They're very judgmental. Middle school's tough
Mm.
on children. So, but even though I went through that difficulty, to me, it was the change that I learned, had to embrace, which then gave me that perspective of trying things that were new and not being afraid of stepping outside of my comfort zone.
Mm. No, and I think that's a really good point. I did the same when I was younger as well. My parents moved me every 2 years for a while, and had to leave schools at awkward points. I mean, at awkward point. I think I did the same. I think I was, yeah, it was probably 11, 12, and yeah, that's a really tough. I started my secondary school and did one term, and we moved at the Christmas, and that was really tough.
Oh yeah, that's tough. Mid-year. Yeah.
Yeah, mid-year, and so I started at the secondary school in the September, and then moved to a new secondary school in the January, and like hundreds of miles away from where I was before. And you kind of, they'd all created their friendship groups, and then I then catapulted in out of nowhere, and I never settled. But I think that's that, and we've obviously got that as a shared experience. But yeah, I think you learn things from those kind of experiences that then when you face the same things again in later in life, you've got that to fall back on, haven't you? That I know how to make friends, or I know how difficult it is to walk into a room and know nobody and have to suddenly find your shoe twin, or whatever it happens to be. But I've made a conscious effort with my children that they went to the same primary school, the same secondary school, the same college, all the way. So that they moved up with their peers the whole way through, and didn't move. I don't. They moved house before they went to school, and then they hadn't moved since. So for them, and my sister's done the same with her children, because it was such a traumatic experience for us to constantly be moving. We've both made that conscious effort that it's not going to happen to our children. It sounds like you've done the same.
By accident, but
I think it's a mindset thing, isn't it? It's change, and approaching change is definitely a mindset thing.
One thing I think that I personally gained from the experiences, and I didn't connect it until you said a few things that you just talked about. But when I was young and in school, I was always the one that if there was a kid that came in mid-year, if there was a kid that people like thought was weird, or they were the weird kids or whatever, I tended to always be super friendly to them because I was compassionate about how they felt. So my compassion was built because I knew what it was like to be that kid that walked in the middle of the class after everybody was there. I knew the pains, and I didn't want other people to feel that. So I was going to be the friendly one. Did I become their best friend? Probably not, but that's okay. I was still going to be friendly. I was still going to let them into this world that I knew would be difficult without some introductions.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways, every bad experience can be turned into a good one, or there's always good that comes out of a bad one.
Yeah. And you've kept that. You've kept that skill, because it was you that when I went into the chamber, it was you that approached me. It was you that, and we've kept
I still do that to this
friendship.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You
look for the
definitely do.
stragglers in a group, and that's who I go over to.
You look for the awkward person in the group.
Well, the one that looks uncomfortable is where I go.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me, so do you think that think about a time when something initially terrified you in your business. There must be something, but that you there's strengthened you in business. Can you think?
Well, yes, because if you think about what I've been doing for the last 5 years, I've been pivoting.
Uh-huh.
I've been doing a career for 30 years before that. That was very solid and very, I don't even need to advertise because I'm well known. So, and now all of a sudden I'm going down a new path. That path is transition. That path is change. I have to now learn new skills that I didn't need in the other position, which then continues to develop me. But it is terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. There is moments of terror in that process. I'm not a young 20-year-old who's ready to take on the world. I mean, I have years of experience, but what am I going to do with that experience, right? I'm just going to keep that experience and then bring it into this new thing that I have much more passion about at this point in my life. So that transition is scary.
It is scary. I think you're right. But and it comes with, I think if you have change when you're a young person, you don't have that wealth of experience to be able to rely on, do you? So you've got this kind of library of of wealth of experience. This kind of you can just pull one off the shelf and go, yeah, I've been there, I've done that. Or I remember something that's similar to this, and that's how it's going to feel. And it's that kind of being able to know in yourself, I remember this. This is how it's going to feel. This is what and you can then go, right, so this is going to be my reaction to it. And you can always practice that reaction, can't you? Because I've been here, I've done that, I know how it's going to feel. So yeah, I think change as you get older can be easier or can be harder because you're set in your ways. And I think I know, I mean, I know people who are so set in their ways that they won't even change the day of the week that they're doing their shopping because that's what they're doing. And doesn't matter what happens, that's the day that they're going to do their grocery shopping. And they won't change from it. And it makes them very fixated on things, and it makes them very unflexible. So I think change makes you
Yeah, and
agile.
I know a few people who are on the spectrum that are that way. They're very high functioning, but when you take them outside of their normal pattern, their anxiety level gets so high that they sometimes break down during that anxiety. So the patterns help reduce anxiety for them. So depending on where they are on that spectrum, it can really be difficult for them. But again, having the understanding that not everybody is the same, that helps us deal with life. Also having the understanding that you can develop new skills if you want to. If something is hard or something is really anxious and you identify it, you say, this really freaks me out. Why? Instead of going, this freaks me out, I can't. Why is this freaking me out? Is it logical that it's freaking me out? Am I really in fear of something that's real? Or am I imagining a bunch of things that could happen that will never happen? So where is the fear coming from? Is it just discomfort, or is it real? Because if it's real, then you need to act on it. But if it's all those other things, then you can build up your confidence, build up that resistance to that fear. You can feel the fear and do it anyway, right? So change is all about change. The struggle with change is fear.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I was going to say. And we've talked about that. We had an episode earlier on in the series that was all about fear, and I don't think at that point that we talked much about the fear of change.
I don't
But
think
it
so
is
either.
no, but it's one that is it is, and it is. You're absolutely right. It's about fear. So how do we reframe? How do we reframe the fear of change? How do we approach it?
Well, I think you have to approach it differently based on the fear. And I'll tell you why. Or the change is what I meant to say. That if I have a change in my life that I have no control over, somebody I love dies. That is an ugly change. It is going to be painful. I have to learn to relive a certain aspect of my life without them, right? So there's a huge amount of pain that happens in those kinds of changes. So never can we rush a human through that process, and every griever grieves differently. So that's where our community of humans needs to come with kindness, and sometimes silence is our best friend in some of those moments. So that those kind of changes happen in our lives. We tend to think, walk around with blinders and just hope that I'll never see that change, but they happen. Divorces happen. Sometimes you can kind of see it happening. Other times it shocks people. The one of them was clueless, and those things can shake you. So there are those kind of changes that shake you. Your house burns down, that shakes you. So understanding the difference between a very heavy, high stress level change versus ones you have control over. A move is very stressful, but a move is usually a choice, unless you're a child, because you have no choice when you're a child.
And you
So,
recognize when it's coming, usually.
yes, you're planning for it. You're thinking, so there's some level of control you have in the process of that change. And recognizing that change happens. Change is the one thing you can predict.
Apart from taxes.
Yes, if you don't like
those
something, it will change. If you love something, it will change. So, and that's where you just look at life from a day-to-day perspective, and you say, okay, today I have what I need, and I'm going to look out the window and I'm going to enjoy what I see, versus being consumed with, oh, I don't have my friends anymore. It's all about living. For me, the mind shift is being able to live in a day, in a 24-hour period. Waking up in the morning, it's a new one. That whole perspective of day tight compartments that Dale Carnegie talked about years and years and years ago. That really helps me personally.
Okay, that's good.
How about you?
I think you're right. Recognizing that change, that things are going to change, and sometimes that's really helpful, because if you're in a really tough situation, recognizing that it's not always going to be like that, that situation is going to change, that eventually it will come to an end, or you will learn to accept it, or you will learn to cope with it. But your attitude or that situation will change. And the same if you happen to be in a really good place. Unfortunately, things in life do happen. So recognizing that change is kind of inevitable. And I think having the mindset of just embracing, going with the flow to a certain extent, and just not. I know I'm a complete control freak. I know that people that know me know that I am a complete control freak. I love.
I have a tendency to be that way. I won't lie.
I mean, I'm going home for a couple of weeks, going back to the UK for a couple of weeks very soon, and I need to know what I'm going to be doing each day. Which bed am I going to be sleeping in? Who am I going to be seeing? What am I going to be doing? I've got it planned out. I've got to have this list of, right, on Saturday I'm doing this, on Sunday I'm doing this. I need to have that in my own mind, and I think it really frustrates my husband anyway, because he kind of like wants to go more with, oh well, we'll just go with what. But then I'm going to miss out on seeing somebody or doing something or be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I need to have kind of like, so I need to have planned it.
Which is another fear we could talk about another time. That's fear of missing out.
Oh, FOMO. Yeah.
That's a whole nother beast, but you just mentioned it. Yeah.
But yeah. So I'm a control freak in that way. However, I do have to accept the fact that in that minute planning, micro planning that I like to do, I do have to realize that actually, if something changes, if that's just not going to work, or something happens that stops it, I have to then go, okay, so let's change it. Let's work out the next plan. Let's have plan B. Let's have itinerary number B or letter B. Let's pivot. So I think that the ability to be able to pivot, the ability to be flexible has to be in that kind of control, micro control that I've got. But
Definitely.
I'm weird, aren't I? Yeah.
No,
Maybe
you're
not.
not. There's actually quite a few women just like you, and men for that matter. So when you're working with women business owners
Yeah.
who are resistant to updating their visual brand because they have a great picture of them 20 years ago and they don't really want to present themselves with this changed, they've had 4 children. I mean, life made things change. Or they have fears like we've talked about, or blocks. What are some things that you might help as you're coaching a woman? What are some things you might help them either see in themselves or create a structure that they could then follow to make those changes not be as scary or be able
Okay. So
to overcome that?
Okay, so I'm going to let you do the visual brand bit. I'm going to let you talk about how do you change that bit. So but for women that I deal with that have difficulty with change, what advice do I give them? I first of all get them to take a breath, and I've talked about this all the time. Everything that I do, and some people call it the power of the pause, and where you just go, okay, and recognize that they are going to have to face things differently than they perhaps were expecting to. So they have to kind of recognize the change, and that's the same thing in everything that we talk about, is that you just have to recognize it. And then I would then get them to look long distance. Okay, where do they want to get to and how are they going to get there, and build a plan in their mind as to. So it's a kind of, in coaching, it's a lot, you set a goal and then you put the action points in place to be able to do it. And yeah, so I think that's how I would get women to approach change.
Just take a moment for a slight interruption. We wanted to share some exciting news.
Exceptional women professionals often struggle to communicate their expertise. Rediscover, refine, rebrand women's retreats provide a transformative, intimate experience that help clarify your unique identity, so you are self-confident and courageous, stand out in your industry, and enjoy effective marketing.
Join us on one of these retreats. Go to arielfaith.com and choose your date that fits your schedule. Reserve your exclusive spot with a simple deposit, and then enjoy tailored planning tips and details from us to get ready for this inspiring experience. In the meantime, if you can like, share, and comment on this podcast, we'd appreciate the love. Thank you.
What about you? So have a look at that. When people are resistant to changing their visual brand.
Well, it's really kind of funny because I had this conversation with a potential client the other day, and we were just talking about a very similar situation. She had a picture that was done 20 years ago or whatever, and everybody knows that that picture is on that card, on her business card, but she doesn't look like that anymore. And I said, what happens when you show up and you knock on the door? What message are you sending about your own value and the way you see yourself? If I only had value 20 years ago, I have automatically sent a very unintended message that I am no longer as valuable as I was when I was 20.
Wow, that's really wise, Ariel.
It is. But it's true. I mean, I'm doing this just so everybody knows I'm doing this growing my color out thing because I use henna, so it's a little more challenging. But it's been an interest. Talk about change and the struggle with. It's been very interesting. I've been kind of like studying myself as I go through this process, and I don't know whether I like it or not. But anyway, so far I'm embracing it. So I understand how hard it is to look at yourself and not see what you want to see. I get it. So to have a woman that feels that way and that but she's in business and she knows she needs to be visible. I mean, they all of the major coaches are all talking about visibility. But from a kind of a different perspective, it's like if you're not doing it, you will not succeed. It's almost like the separation is becoming bigger. If you're not doing podcasts, if you're not doing videos and other things, then you are going to slowly fall on the bottom of the chain with all the other chain on the bottom, right? So if you want to elevate your brand, it's really necessary. And I just did a cover for a magazine the other day, and the woman lived a very beautiful life. Very struck. You could tell that there was moments of pain in her life. You could tell that there was moments of triumph, things she loved. You could just, all the passion was in there because she's had 7 decades of life. So needless to say, the woman she looks at in the mirror at that point, most stunning woman I've met in years. But you have to look for that. And you have to, when you're a photographer, you have to look for who they are and the validity of them. You have to see it in their eyes, and then you got to pull that through the camera and the post-processing because it's a dual process. It's, the camera can get so close, but sometimes you got to add a little extra light in a couple spots that the camera didn't do just to show. This woman had the most gorgeous light blue eyes that I have seen in a really long time. And it was like, you have to showcase that because there was a spark still in her eye. There was a love still in her eye. It was there. So no matter what was happening in the skin, which is just experience and laugh lines, and, if you look at it differently, you see the beauty in it, even in the aging process. Whereas we're so plastic, our models are all so photoshopped, you'd be embarrassed to even see the difference between the before and afters. I mean, they look like everyone else. They look like us before they're in that model shoot.
Yeah.
They really do. I've seen them, so I know this. If they were walking in a store without makeup on, you wouldn't notice them at all. And the amazing part is so this separation that media has done with beauty, it's up to us to say, look, I can show you the best version of me and I can present that in a photograph, but I'm still going to be the same person who knocks on your door.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really tough, isn't it? Particularly, people that are trying to win business or apply for a job or something like that, particularly as they get older. Someone said to me yesterday, are you experiencing ageism? And I still look at myself and think, I'm not old. Please don't put me in that category yet. How can you be ageist against me? I'm not old, but
You're not old.
I am old. I'm just about to turn 51.
You're not old.
But yeah, so that's a challenge though, isn't it? In this day and age that everything is so visual and and people are so judgmental about people's appearance and it shouldn't make any difference. It shouldn't affect how you react to people because I mean I know what I'm like about social media. Stop comparing yourself to other people. It's so dangerous because you're absolutely right. But other people have used a filter or airbrushed themselves or used a 20-year-old photograph or are just really good at putting makeup on. Or, or they happen to show you a picture, they happen to go out that day with their hair beautiful. I mean, I know my pictures that I use are beautiful, but I had a good photographer.
But it was you that was beautiful. I just pulled you out. That's the difference. You don't
Anyway.
always get that when you do your own photography. You can tell somebody's doing selfies because usually the angle in which they do the selfie, it's pretty predictable, and the distance of the camera. But and there are some people who do great jobs. So don't take that for anything more than it's worth. But when you have somebody else who's going to take the time to see the person they're photographing and then take the time to work with the lights and work with the camera and the lighting and the various tools that we have in photography to present the best version we can of you, then you will now see what I see. Because most of us only look at ourselves and then we see all the flaws. Whereas when we look at other people, we do not do that.
No,
I mean, there's judgmental people, but I ignore them. I just don't pay attention to them.
And that's a really good thing you just bring up though, because I talk to my clients a lot about looking in the mirror and seeing. I make them look in a mirror whilst we're on a coaching session, and I make them pull out 5 things that they really love about themselves and their physical appearance. And some people find that really, really hard. And that some of them will bring up things about themselves that they really hate. When I look at myself, this is what I see. This is what, and you have to say, well, no, I forget about those bits. I really want you to really focus on the things that you really love and tell me why you really love them. And eventually they do come up with 5 things that they really love about themselves. And then I challenge them to do that on a daily basis, to look in the mirror when cleaning your teeth or putting your contact lenses in or doing your makeup. Tell yourself the things that you really love about yourself, even though you don't, it doesn't equate with perhaps the version of you that you've got in your head, but just, and that way you can then embrace the change that happens in our faces as we get older, because you learn to love what's there, I think. Anyway, I think we're meant to be talking about change, not about face.
Well, faces change. That's a part of change. Women, we have babies, we have big bellies, we have skinny bellies, we have big bellies. We experience a lot of change. And what's kind of interesting is the generation Gen X, if you look at what they grew up with when they were young, going from the oldest to the youngest, right? The amount of change they have experienced is probably crazy. We didn't have cell phones. We had Dick Tracy with his digital watch, which was like some sci-fi thing that'll never happen, right? And now everybody's walking around with the iPhones, so we had all this. The first game we had was literally a sheet of plastic you stuck on the TV, and it played like a Pong game where it's like 2 little paddles and the ball went across, but the actual screen was just literally a white ball and lines.
Yeah.
And the thing you stuck on top was the color green to make it a paddleboard. Anyway, it was craziness. So, but all of those changes, people didn't have computers in their home.
No.
Now they're normal. Printers are normal. All of this, there's a massive amount of change we have experienced as a generation that I don't know if it made us more resilient, I think there's something it did good for this generation that some of the younger generations, because they grew up with this is normal. Whereas to us, we know what it's like to go out in the yard and play and go on adventures and we've lived 2 different lives, so to speak. A world without tech and a world with tech.
Yeah, and tech has made a massive difference, hasn't it? That's one change that that some of it's really good, some of it is amazing, some of
I
it is
mean,
really
you had
not
to get
good.
off the couch to change the channel when I was growing up. I know that's horrible,
Yeah, and
but
it
you
wasn't a
did.
button, it was a dial.
Yes. And if you didn't if the movie was Friday night at 8 o'clock, you had to wait a year to watch that movie again. I mean,
It
it's
is
crazy when you
funny,
really
isn't
stop
it?
to think about it. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I mean, to start with, we only had one channel on the television. Then we had
Or
two, then we had three, then we had
three.
four, then we had five, and now we've got well, it's infinite, isn't it? And then you can watch anything, anytime, whenever you want to. I think you're right there. I mean, boomers before us, they went through a huge amount of change as well. That's rude. There's someone at my door. I'm keep talking, Ariel, and I'll come back.
Okay. So we're talking about change. Let's see. Our next question is going to be, how do you help clients see the connection between evolving their visual representation and stepping into a more confident version of themselves? Well, that's pretty much what we've just been talking about. So when we are embracing change or accepting change, there's a difference between embracing and accepting change.
Yeah,
Would you
I think
agree?
you're right. Yeah.
So when we learn how to do either of those, I'm not going to say one is better than the other, but I think there is a difference. But when we learn how to do either of those, I think we can then begin to look at I'm looking at the fourth question, the evolving and the representation and stepping into a more confident version of ourselves. Just getting Miriam up to speed.
Sorry.
um, I think we can start to learn to frame and look at what is and love what is, not what was, or even be consumed with what will be. Because, when you get to a certain point, it's all downhill from there. So, but if you spend too much time worried about that and a reasonable amount, doing preventative health is great, you
Yeah.
know, keeping moving and all the things that so you can move when you're 80. Whereas if you don't do it you don't start that when you're young, all those things. Being proactive is different than being reactive. So I don't know if I
I
answered
think
that
you're right.
question
And I
or
think,
not. But
yeah, I think you touched on this earlier as well, though. Living in the moment is really important, and recognizing that it's not going to be the same as it was yesterday, and it's not going to be the same tomorrow's going to be different as well. And live and be present in the moment and actually just
100%.
enjoy the moment. Because we can constantly be obsessed with, yes, but it's not the same as it used to be, or in my day, or or being worried about the future, or worried about how things are going to change. Because if you're constantly obsessing about it's not going to be the same tomorrow, or worrying about how change is going to affect you, then but you can't control it. And I talk about that a lot with my clients, is that worry about the things that you can control and not about the things that you can't control. Kind of like you said earlier, compartmentalize these things so that these are the things that I have direct control over, direct influence over. And those are the things that I'm going to concentrate on, and stop worrying about the things around us that you can't control. Like, we can't control how people react to us. What we can do is that we can control our own behavior and how we react to them, but we
Yes.
can't control how they react to us. So stop worrying about it. That's their problem. And so yeah, very much kind of I give out a handout, which is the circle of influence, and the things in the middle are the things, and that's a very small amount of things that you can actually control and actually make a difference to. And that's our own behavior and our own attitudes and those kind of things. And then there's a circle that you've got influence over but you can't really control. And then you've got the things, the big circle on the outside. Start putting those things in those circles and then letting go and just accepting that you can't do anything about it, and you just have to kind of go, don't like it, but can't do anything about it, so let's live with it. And so that's about controlling your own attitude to it. And I think that's one way that you can learn to deal with change, is by compartmentalizing and just control the things you can control, and your attitude to them.
Yeah, and just thinking about the amount of, we have the same, every human has the same amount of, hours in a day. We have the same amount of brain cells for the most part, unless they did too many drugs when they were young. But the amount of brain energy that is consumed with worry or resentment or anger or fear because of the past.
Yeah.
The amount of energy that takes from you today means you can't cope today because you don't have the energy. You're giving it to the future and the past. So just from an energy standpoint, and brains use calories. The more calories we use that aren't in today, the less calories we have for today. So the more you live in the present, the more you learn how to do that. And that is something you have to learn how to do if you're not doing that already. And it's a struggle for a lot of people because I don't think most people are brought up that way. They're always like, school is a next grade, next level. Games are definitely that way. That's why there's never an end, because they're always insatiable. You got to get to, and then when they're done, they get to the next series, and it just keeps going, right? So there's always this, I gotta do it, this frenzy mentality. But all of that energy is not allowing you to see those good things that are happening right in front of you. To be able to even know yourself, which takes energy. To be able to see your flaws and your flaws and the good things about yourself, and realize that you can treasure the good things and you can work on the flaws.
Yeah, that's good. Good advice.
You're not stuck with them. You can always work on them. If you don't know how, you get help, you hire a coach, you read books, you do something to gain the knowledge to work on the things you don't like about yourself. And there are things, behaviors, thought patterns that you don't like about yourself. So think about that for a second. You don't like something about yourself. So are you going to just let it sit there? If you had cancer and you could do something about it, would you let it sit there? No. Because 10 years from now, where would you be?
No,
Really
that's
sick.
good point.
So if we see something, rather than throwing us away because we have a flaw, which is what we do with products, if something's broke, you throw it away. So we're very much a throwaway society, but people are way more than things. People are incredibly beautiful people. And the more you learn how to live today, the more beauty you see in other people. Because you have the energy.
That's a good point. A lot of people really struggle mentally, and a lot of that is based on regret, things that they've done in the past, things that they wish that they'd done differently. And we all need to learn to kind of go, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's happened. It's done. Draw a line in the sand. There's this amazing cartoon, and it's Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny, and it's based in the Wild West time. And Yosemite Sam draws a line in the sand and makes Bugs Bunny step over it, and then he draws another one and he steps over it, and draws another one and he steps over it. And you kind of got to do that. You kind of got to draw a line in the sand and go, that was the past. That was how it was. That's what happened. I'm going to learn from that, and I'm going to move on. And I can't change it, and I won't do it the same again next time. And that's the learning about change, isn't it? You kind of I mucked up that time. I'm not going to do that again. So learn from change. Learn from how you reacted to it, or what you changed to it. But I think you're right. I think living in the present, giving your energy to the present. I like that. The thought of the energy for now rather than the energy for what could have happened previously or what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, the
None of
coulda
us
or
know.
shoulda,
Yeah,
right?
coulda, woulda, shoulda. There's no, you
Yep.
can't. Yeah, you can't dictate what's going to happen in the future. You're just going to have to live with it. So just go with it. Go with the flow.
All right. So was there ever a client that you worked with that was whose willingness to change her visual brand directly impacted her ability to change her self-worth? What she's worth. Change what she's worth.
Charge what she's worth.
Oh, charge what she see what happens when I have my glasses not on or off. That's another change. Speaking of, I used to be able to see perfect. Getting old is real, guys. They're not lying.
So a client whose willingness to change her visual branding directly impacted her ability to charge what she's worth.
I think the process of the branding, if you're working with the right person, and I say that because some will be focused on results, not the process. The process of branding is really self-reflective, but it's also who you want to serve and what are your clients like. So you have to do a lot of thinking about psychology in what you choose, in yourself and outside. What do you want to share with the world, and what do you want to, or where are you now personally, right? So there's a lot of introspective stuff that has to happen in that branding process. So if you have somebody who's like, okay, I'll show up at 12, I'll take your shots and I'll be done as a photographer, they didn't take the time to get to know you and your journey or your client's journey. So they're not going to take you through a journey. But for me, it is a journey. It is time. And it's time well spent, because then you end up with things you can use. It's not just a bunch of pretty pictures. That's where the strategy comes in. But charging, this is a tough one for a lot of women. Charging what you're worth. And I did in our webinar, and it's on our YouTube channel, but I did a piece on math and value back in the first quarter this year. And for me, I think a lot of times when you show a woman that if she's in a multi-level marketing, I'm going to use this as an example because this is a good example. I think of women spend a lot of money and time and don't realize what they're doing. They're selling a product for $20. They make $4 off that $20. They sell 100 of those. What did they make?
$400.
How long did it take them to sell 100 of those?
Quite
4
a long
months.
time. Yeah.
Did they make a good living?
Depends on your point of view, but no, probably not. No, $400 over 4 months is not a lot of money. No.
It might be enough to buy that extra dress that she wanted. So it might be good extra cash, but if she's trying to sustain her family on that, is that a wise decision? But if she's never shown the math or never shown how to use the math to then see her value. And there's a thing I was just talking about earlier with one of my coaches, and she called it something, and I hadn't heard of that before. I love learning. It's so much fun. Let me see in my messed up notes. She used a specific term. Your minimal viable rate. You probably heard of that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take your experience, your life, what it costs to live, right? And then what it costs to have a business, which there's huge amounts of expenses. Even if you don't have a storefront, you have a house, you have an office in your house, there's still a great deal of expenses between websites and CRMs. And I mean, there's, that adds up really fast. So you take all of those things and you look at them, and then any supplies or materials that you might need and equipment, et cetera, to do what your job is. Um, and then you break that into the 12 months, right? You break that into how many hours you are willing to give to work
Mm-hmm.
and what is the minimal amount that you have to make an hour for you to begin to be successful.
Yes, it's working backwards, isn't it? It's
It
kind
is
of
working backwards.
instead of going, I could sell it at $20 and make $4, but is that going to be is that going to be viable? Do you know how much it's going to actually cost you? I mean, there's the
To
cost
make
of
that
buying.
$4.
Yeah, there's the cost of buying the thing in the first place, isn't there? And then there's all the other overheads that you've got on top of that. But plus there's you. It's putting you in there. Your time, your effort, your experience has got to be in there as well, and how much you're worth as a person. So yeah, I mean there's lots of elements that make up what you are going to charge.
And a lot of women struggle with charging what they're worth.
Mm,
And they do the comparison.
mm,
They look at what salon A is selling it for and what is salon B selling it for. So they try to either go lower than them to be affordable, or, instead of looking at what is the reality of this expense and the reality of my experience versus those that have a, transition of every couple of years there's somebody new in there. So there's a consistency versus an inconsistency. So will the salon even be open in a year?
mm,
This is where businesses fail because they don't see their own value. And it's tough when somebody says, "Oh, but I can't afford it." And you really want the client. And then can you
mm,
give me a discount? I mean, that happens all the time. Let's be honest. We're not a bartering society by general terms, but when it comes to entrepreneurs, it's like people want to barter with you.
mm.
When it's McDonald's, do you go into McDonald's and ask for a different price on your burger? Never.
Mm.
Do you go to
No, and I
Walmart?
think everyone wants something for nothing though, don't they? And they don't um but if it's something that they value, if it's something that they really they recognize the value for, and that's the thing, isn't it? You've got to show them what value you are adding to their life by giving them the service that you're providing, or giving, that the product is worth.
What problem will you solve? And what will be the results?
No,
And also,
what will happen if you don't?
exactly. So
Mm,
there's both sides of that.
yeah.
If you go down a path and you go A or B, where are you going to end up? And because you're at the crossroads when you're working with a client. This is a crossroads for you. You can choose to go down this path or you can choose not to. It's your choice, 100%. But and then if you have a high ticket value because you have the experience and the backing, all that to do that, or think of doctors. I mean, they have a lot of laws. They have to charge a certain amount, not necessarily even because they want to, but because the insurances and all this other stuff that they have no control over creates this nightmare for us when it comes to the financial world of medical. But if they go the other route, which is not accepting insurance, that is a way they can go.
Yeah.
But how many, so it's like every path has a different set of problems and solutions.
Yeah.
I think that just made no sense, but that's okay. All right. So why don't we change the subject? Because we're going to come
I
back
like
and
what you
talk
did there.
talk more about emotional intelligence when we come back. So we're going to be a little more thoughtful and intelligent in our speech. So we will see you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Ariel.
Thanks, Miriam.
See you next episode. After all, it is your brand, your story, and your success, because Ariel and I know you matter in your business.
Thank you for listening to the You Matter in Business podcast with Please follow, share, like, and comment. We would love to hear from you. This podcast is sponsored by Ariel Faith Photography and Enrich Life Coaching. The show notes provide more information on how to contact Ariel and Miriam and any guest speakers who share in our journey together.